Okay, we're going to be starting the meeting in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to introduce Mayor Madison Davis for a few introductory remarks.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to thank you for attending tonight's Environmental Impact Report EIR scoping meeting for the proposed Baylands specific plan submitted by the project applicant BDI earlier this year. EIR preparation is an important milestone for the Baylands. The city is preparing the EIR and wants to hear your opinion on what environmental issues should be studied in the forthcoming environmental document. Thanks again for your interest and engagement, and I would like to introduce Lloyd Zola, the city's environmental consultant, who will conduct tonight's scoping meeting.
Thank you. Okay. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Okay, how do I control this? Let's go back up. Yeah. There we go. Thank you. What we're going to be doing tonight is a scoping meeting for an environmental impact report, and it has a very specific meaning under the law. And the law we're going to be dealing with tonight is the California Environmental Quality Act. I'll call it CEQA. That's the term we normally use. And what this is defined as in the law is an opportunity to provide comments not about the project, but about the environmental analyses that will be prepared to evaluate the environmental effects of the project, the development of the Baylands. And that document that the city will be preparing is called an environmental impact report. I'll also refer to EIR as that document. This is the beginning of the environmental review process. There's going to be other opportunities to address environmental issues, and that will be during a minimum 45-day public review period. When that EIR is prepared, it will be published. There will be public notice of the document, and then the public and public agencies will have a minimum 45 days to provide comments on the environmental analyses in that document. There will also be opportunities to talk about the project itself, which is the development of the Baylands, the specific plan for the Baylands, and that will occur during public hearings in front of the Planning Commission and then in front of the City Council. The city is precluded by law from making any decisions on the project, any decisions regarding development of the Baylands. Is it good? Is it bad? Should we approve it? Should we not approve it? Until the end of the environmental review process. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. The purpose of tonight's meeting is, one, as I said, take comments on the environmental issues that should be addressed. Traffic, noise, whatever issues you believe ought to be addressed in that environmental document. And we'll focus on environmental issues, not the development itself. The comments tonight will inform the preparation of the environmental analyses, and comments on the project really should be occurring as part of the public hearings at the end of the environmental review process. The meeting is being recorded. All comments tonight will become part of the record. Each person who desires to speak will be given 5 minutes to do so. And for those in the audience, we do have speaker cards here. Otherwise, Jeremiah will be calling on people who are attending via Zoom. Written comments will be accepted through May 26th. Comments on the scope of the environmental analysis. Next. Okay, we can go to the next one. A little bit of background. Back in 2018, the City Council adopted a general plan amendment, and then the public voted on Measure JJ, which essentially approved the general plan amendment. This set the basis for development of the Baylands, set the rules, and those rules are 1,800 to 2,200 dwelling units, a maximum of 6.5 million square feet of commercial office space, plus another 500,000 square feet of hotel area. And also set development policies for the site. So if you look on the city's website, look up the general plan, there will be a chapter or policies developed by sub-area, and you'll see policies for the Baylands related to sustainability, fiscal responsibility, infrastructure, habitat, open space, and other issues. Next. And we can go to the next one. Now, Baylands Development Incorporated, BDI, has submitted a specific plan to the city. Specific plan is essentially a very detailed document, zoning document, that outlines their plan for development of the Baylands. They are proposing 2,200 dwelling units, 6.5 million square feet of commercial use, 500,000 square feet of hotel use, essentially the maximums permitted under General Plan Amendment 118 and Measure JJ. You see the land use plan there. Their residential uses, there's 3 different types of land use types. High density residential, basically buildings up to 8 stories in height, with some 20+ story residential towers along the Caltrain right-of-way. Mid-density buildings up to 8 stories, and low-density units, 3-story attached and detached units. In commercial, there is high-density commercial with some 20-story buildings adjacent to Caltrain and the Caltrain Bayshore Station. Mid-density up to about 8 stories, and lower density of 6 to 8 story office buildings with retail at ground floor. Public facilities will include a middle school, a fire station, a second fire station for the city, and I'll talk about fire station in a moment, a water recycling facility for the Baylands, a 55-acre solar energy generation field, utility scale battery storage, and electric substation. Next. There is a parks and conservation plan as part of the specific plan, comprising about 157 acres, a little bit more than 30% of the land area. The general plan amendment, general plan requires 25% of the ultimate land area outside of the lagoon and outside of what will be future sea level rise be retained in parks and conservation. The specific plan meets that. Of that 57 acres, there are traditional parks, both active and passive parks, resource conservation, primarily habitat restoration, public safety, which is an open detention basin, as well as managed production of resources. Part of the project will be moving the Mission Blue Nursery, which is used for propagation of plants for San Bruno Mountain Conservancy. Next. And now I'll just talk a little bit about the process we're going through. We can go to the next one. Back in February of 2020, there was a notice of preparation that an environmental impact report was being prepared. That solicited comments regarding the scope of analysis to be included in the EIR that we're now preparing. There was a scoping meeting then. We are holding a second scoping meeting, and now there is an updated notice of preparation to describe some changes to the project description, and we're soliciting additional input for the preparation of the EIR due to the changes in the project description. Those comments on the notice of preparation regarding what should be in this EIR will be accepted up through May 26th. The changes that have been proposed in the plan, we can go to the next slide. There we go. The reason we're doing, the city is doing a new notice of preparation, and we're going through a new scoping meeting. First of all, there is a change in the proposed water supply. The proposed water supply for the project is from Contra Costa Water District's Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project. That is where water will be drawn from for the Baylands. Fire station. The proposal is to relocate the city's existing fire station to 140 Valley Drive, and then build a new fire station within the Baylands. This is being proposed actually as part, it's not in the specific plan itself, it's part of a discussion between the city and North County Fire Authority. And electrical facilities being proposed that were not part of the previous specific plan include utility scale battery storage, electrical substation within the Baylands, as well as the utility connections from the Baylands to the Martin substation, along with some improvements at the Martin substation. This is in addition to the solar field that has been proposed from the start of the project. Next. The process following tonight and the close of this review period on May 26th is the city is in the process now of preparing a draft environmental impact report. That will be the compilation of all of the environmental studies that are now underway. There will be, the state law requires a 45-day review period to give the public and public agencies a chance to review the draft environmental impact report, as well as to make comments on it. So once that document is ready and prepared, it will be published. There will be public notice opening up that review period for people to provide written comments on the analyses that are actually done as to what are the physical environmental impacts that Baylands development would result in. The city will then provide written responses to all comments that are received during that public review period and prepare what is called a final EIR. The final EIR will consist of the draft EIR, all the comments received on the draft EIR, the city's responses to those comments, as well as any revisions deemed necessary to the draft EIR based on those comments and responses. Only then, after that final EIR is prepared and available for public review, is the city permitted to hold public hearings on the project itself. And that will start with public hearings in front of the Planning Commission and then the City Council. Okay, next. So now we'll just talk about quickly the issues that we know will be addressed in the environmental impact report. We'll be discussing land use and planning, consistency with city general plan policies, as well as policies adopted as part of regional plans and statewide plans. We'll be looking at socioeconomic effects. Now, socioeconomic effects are not directly a physical environmental impact, and what the EIR will address are physical environmental impacts. But we will look at, as part of this section, how changes in population, housing, and employment change and lead indirectly or could lead indirectly to physical environmental impacts. We'll also be looking at the economic effects of Baylands commercial and office, whether that would result in physical effects on existing development. We'll look at biological resources, and that will be new technical studies that are being undertaken, cultural and tribal cultural resources, looking at archaeological and religious tribal cultural resources referring to things of religious significance to local tribes, Native American tribes, transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, energy, looking at the energy generation and energy consumption that Baylands development would have, effects of noise, changes of noise. We'll be looking at geology, soils, and seismic effects of building on this site, hydrology and water quality effects of the development, issues related to hazards and hazardous materials related to the Baylands development following remediation that is subject to review of state regulatory agencies, looking at physical impacts related to development of public services and public facilities, looking at physical environmental impacts related to recreation resources, and then also looking at physical environmental impacts related to development of utilities, service systems, and then we'll be looking at impacts related to water supply and the movement of water from Los Vaqueros to the Baylands. Next. We have found that there are certain effects that are obviously not going to be significant and will not be addressed in the EIR, in the Environmental Impact Report. Agriculture. There is no agricultural land within the Baylands or Brisbane. Mineral resources. The site has been determined not to contain mineral resources. And while fire and fire hazards will be discussed as part of public services and facilities and hazards, there are no wildlands that would result in wildland fire hazards. Next slide. The other parts of the environmental impact report required by law that will be addressed are alternatives to the project. So the project being the specific plan that has been submitted by BDI, will be looking at these alternatives. One is no project. We're required by law to look at what happens if no action is taken or if the city does not approve the specific plan either as proposed or as might be modified in a public hearing. Essentially, what if no development occurs on the Baylands? We'll also be looking at alternatives that CEQA requires we look at in how can we modify the project to reduce any significant impacts we find. And so we'll be looking at two different types of alternatives. One would be looking at concentrating development into a smaller footprint, and the second would be lowering the density of development consistent with the existing general plan. And we'll also be looking at combinations of these two parameters, concentrating and lowering development density. And then looking at cumulative effects. Law requires, CEQA requires that we look at not just the impacts of the Baylands in isolation, but also look at what are the impacts of the development that the rest of this environmental impact report has described in combination with, and the phrase is, past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future projects. So we will be looking at what are those past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future projects, presenting a list of those, and then evaluating what happens when we add all of those projects or the Baylands in combination with all of those projects. There'll be less detail in that discussion than you'll have as part of the Baylands, but we will look at that combination of projects. We're also required by law to look at growth-inducing effects, which means when the Baylands is built, if it's built as proposed, does that spur people to propose other projects over and above the Baylands and what we have discussed in those cumulative projects? So with that, we can go to the next one. So there'll be, following tonight, additional opportunities for public comment, as I've mentioned. Through the 26th of May, the city will be accepting written comments on the notice of preparation, looking for comments from the public and public agencies as to the types of environmental studies the city should be undertaking for this project. And then once that environmental document, the EIR, is prepared, a public review period to take comments on the studies themselves. Are they complete? Are they adequate? Should the city have undertaken other studies? And then following that review process on the environmental side, there will be public hearings to take comments specifically on the project. Is it a good project, not a good project, should be approved, modified, and so on. And that will occur before the Planning Commission and City Council. So we can go to the next slide. So what we'd like tonight are public comments on what kinds of studies you believe should be included in that environmental impact report. So at the end of the environmental review process, the City Planning Commission and City Council can make an informed decision regarding development of the Baylands. Comments can be made on the notice of preparation. What kinds of studies should the city be undertaking tonight in person for those of you who are here? They can be made via Zoom for those who are watching this via Zoom. And there's also a dial-in number for those who wish to make comments that way. So if you also want to look at the project, the specific plan that we're talking about, doing the environmental for. We'll leave this slide up through the evening, but this shows where on the city's website you can find the Baylands specific plan as it was proposed to the city by Baylands Development Incorporated. And so with all that, I turn to Jeremiah to invite our speakers.
All right, first up is Chris Puglisi. And as a reminder, you got about 5 minutes.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Puglisi. I'm a member of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters here in Northern California. I currently work at Pile Drivers Local 34, and we just came to the meeting to kind of, for myself, kind of get up to speed. We've been tracking this project for a while. Wasn't really prepared to speak on the CEQA process. It was more for the project itself, so I'd kind of like to yield my time until we get to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
All right, next up is Brian Shields. And if you're in the Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to make a comment.
How's it going this evening? My name is Brian Shields. I'm a field rep for Carpenters Local 217, located in Foster City, covering San Mateo County. And wanted to come here tonight, talk about a little bit about labor standards. With such a large development, we should certainly need some sort of standard for the folks that are going to be building it. We touched on socioeconomic, and by the way, let me thank you for your breakdown of EIR and CEQA. That was probably the best and comprehensive one that I've ever heard. On the socioeconomic bullet point that you had up there, right? The folks that will be building this, if there is no labor standards, will be commuting in from Modesto. They will be commuting in from Salinas. They will be commuting in from Elk Grove, because that's where that they can afford to live, right? Without any kind of labor standards like prevailing wage, healthcare, apprenticeship, so on and so forth, those folks are clogging up the freeways. They're creating traffic hazards left, right, and center, and that's not. I mean, this is a net carbon zero project. That's not what it stands for in any kind of way. So we're here tonight to speak, hopefully, to the developer, as well as go on the record as showing up and talking about the need for labor standards. With apprenticeship, right? We have the ability to take a person who maybe just graduated from high school and give them the right to earn money while they are learning. And that gets them in 4 years to the place where they're a journey person. Once they're a journey person, they have healthcare apprenticeship, or they have healthcare, pension, annuity, and that healthcare isn't just for themselves, but it's also for their family, right? So it's the whole family, it's the whole household that we try to come here and stand for. So I appreciate it, and thank you for listening.
Manisha Kothari, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi, this is Manisha Kothari. I am the Alternative Water Supply Program Manager for the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. We are the wholesale water service provider to the city of Brisbane. And I just wanted to make the comment here that we do not agree with the characterization of the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project as the water supply for this project, and we will be providing a written comment. The Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project is a storage project, does not have a water supply attached to it, and we are participating so far in the planning of the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project. We have not yet determined full participation. The city of Brisbane is not a member of the Joint Powers Authority currently that manages that project. So I'd like to make that comment. We will provide a more comprehensive written comment during this comment period. Thank you.
Next, we have Barbara Abel.
Hi. I heard something that was kind of a little alarming or worrying to me. During the previous Baylands project proposal, they were allowed to study housing as an alternative. And through some black hat magic, the developer managed to turn the study of potential housing as a potential option into kind of a bludgeoning tool through politics in Sacramento, to kind of strong arm the city of Brisbane. And so I'm sort of feeling a little alarmed by the developer's request to study lower density that is not compliant with our general plan. I'm think we'd be stupid not to learn from history, and that this study could then be used to bludgeon us the way the previous study of housing as an alternative on the Baylands was. And I'm just very cautious about that. I'm feeling very alarmed about that because I lived through that and it wasn't funny. Okay, thanks. Bye. That's all.
All right, as a reminder for anybody in Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. And if you're here in person, if you want to speak, would you please fill out a speaker card? Up. Is it Roland? All right. Is anybody else wishing to fill out a speaker card also, or? All right, Roland.
Is this on? Yeah. So the main thing I want to talk about is circulation, is a transportation, how this works. And I know it's a mouthful, but how multimodal integration, which have all these different modes, how we're going to integrate them, is going to make it possible if we somehow revise what's being proposed for people to transfer back and forth, seamlessly without having to get onto a shuttle, etc. So next slide, please. So this is what they're proposing. So that's one of the slides from the community meeting. I think it was either February or March. You see Caltrain at the bottom. You can't quite see in yellow Muni's, the Sunnydale station. Then the purple line, that's the Geneva-Harney extension, which is going to have bus rapid transit, and all these things are in different places. Next slide, please. So, yeah, so this is a continuation. That's the next slide in the presentation. In blue, you see Geneva-Harney, Caltrain's at the top, and then to the left, I guess, which is the west side. That's where Muni is, and none of this stuff hangs together. Next slide, please. So that's the problem, because this stuff is just all over the place. So let's just suppose you're on BRT. You're coming from Balboa Park, for instance. You want to get onto Caltrain. How does that work? Well, basically, it doesn't work. And then so you got the circles. Top left is Muni, Sunnydale. Top right is Caltrain. Down there is Geneva-Harney, which is where the BRT is going to be. And actually, that dot that I got over there for the shuttle, that is where everything needs to happen. So next slide, please. So that's a proposal. We just have this hub there. And the way we're going to get that done is the first thing that needs to happen is the Caltrain station's got to move. And if, whoops, what happened? Okay, I'm out of time? Okay, all right, there we go. So the Caltrain station needs to move. And the best, if there is some agreement with this, it's obviously going to be a P3. It's going to be a partnership with the developer. If this happens, we can actually build this Caltrain station without having any impact on Caltrain, because Caltrain stays where it is doing its own business,
We just build a station, everything we have to, and then one day we just reroute the tracks and we just go through it and we're done. But then I'm going to show you on the next slide where everything moves. Basically, what's going to happen is that the light rail right now, I don't know if you know this, goes all the way down past Geneva. It actually ends up, the tail tracks are in Daly City. So the light rail can just make a turn on Geneva Avenue and start heading towards, Candlestick Point or wherever, towards Harney. The BRT, we already know where it's going. Everybody's happy with that, okay? And we've got all the pieces. Next slide. So 6 big moves. So first of all, let's bring on the dirt. They've got this area there that's, flood prone and contaminated and everything. We raise it by 30 feet, okay? Then we build a train box, which is 30 feet deep. So the track stays where they are, but everything around there has moved up 30 feet. And by the way, we've just done this in London. I don't know if you know Stratford City, that's exactly how that was built. And the dirt came from the tunnels, but here we don't have everything. Well, maybe San Francisco helped us with tunnels. Then we cover the train box. It's just disappeared, it's gone. The developer can now build above it. In London, they didn't. They just left it as an open trench. That's up to them. Then we reroute the Caltrain tracks to a new box. And then Caltrain, once they move to the new station, placate everything that they got over there, turn it over to the developer, and now all these funky parcels they got bigger parcels, they can do a lot more intelligent things with what's left there. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'm done. That's it. So that's what it looks like. So at the top, you can see the current Caltrain station. The new one is actually long enough for high-speed trains, so we can turn them around. Geneva Avenue, and then I think that's the last slide. And that's what it looks like. This is how you get seamless integration. So right now they just got BRT at the top. You can bring in Muni through Geneva Avenue. Obviously they're gonna have their shuttles. And this is how the tracks look like, and we've now got everything in one hub in one place. Thank you.
Well, given that's everybody's who wants to speak tonight, thanks for your time, and this meeting is adjourned.